Hey everyone, welcome back to another video here on the channel. This week, Ford was kind enough to lend me the refreshed 2025 Ford Explorer ST to test and review for you guys. And I have to say my week with the Explorer ST was quite interesting given the fact that I have not driven in a new generation Explorer up until this point. And I was able to take it on a 300 plus mile round trip road trip and got to experience BlueCruise, the hands-free driving assistance feature from Ford. Got to see what MPG and fuel economy was at 75, 77 miles an hour out on the interstate, and generally just got a little bit more time behind the wheel than I do regularly given that road trip and things like that. So as usual, over my week with this vehicle, there's certainly going to be a bunch of standout features that I really did enjoy with the Ford Explorer, but there's also going to be a few negatives that I did not like about it, and hopefully Ford can look into these, maybe fix them in a future iteration of the vehicle. So without further ado, let's not waste time and get right into it. So as usual, starting out my list of likes with the Explorer ST, the first one is going to be the interior design as well as the interior materials. So the Explorer ST does get a fairly unique interior versus that of some of the other trim levels within the lineup, meaning that it is going to be a mix of suede or Alcantara insert with leather bolsters, red accent stitching, a unique steering wheel with some of the materials there. And overall, I really did enjoy it, and I think there is a lot of visual appeal to the interior versus that of some Ford products that I've had experience with, in the last generation or, 5+ years ago, what have you. So I really was quite impressed with the Explorer ST's interior, where these soft touch materials were located. Of course, like I said, the seats are going to be a mix of that leather and suede Alcantara insert. Had unique ST little embossment, or I should say coloration within the perforations on the backrest of the seats. The center console had some of the nicer leather materials with the red accents, so your knee kind of pushed up against that rather than a hard plastic. The doors look quite nice. They had the silver accent trim. Of course, the color changing ambient interior lighting looked fantastic at nighttime on both the front and rear doors. And overall, like I said, with some of the tweaks and changes that they made for this refresh and just the Explorer ST in general, I think it is certainly one of the more standout features that, I was really impressed with, and I was, overall for the price point, quite satisfied with. So I thought that was very good. Now my second like, staying on the interior, has to do with the refresh and some of the, redesigned interior elements. And that is going to be the center console layout, specifically with the wireless charging pad. So as we know, for this 2025 refresh, some of that center console area, the screen orientation did get changed from the pre-refresh models. So this is now a horizontal screen rather than a vertical if you get the larger screen. And then with that comes the AC vents and the wireless charging pad just below the screen. And this is one of the best, most ergonomic wireless chargers I have seen implemented in newer vehicles. Now, there are some very good other ones out there from other manufacturers, but this one, I think the way it is, a shelf orientation, kind of slides right below the AC vents, is a perfect location if you're going to use it every day, and just want to quickly insert your phone in there. It's a decent usable size. Larger phones might fill it up all the way. I have a Pixel 9 Pro, which is a little bit on the smaller side, but it fit in there, no issues, case or not. And I just think it was a very, well laid out, well thought out spot. It would be nice to see maybe a dual wireless charger pad, given that space does have, kind of symmetrical layout. So you could put another wireless charger to the right of that and have essentially a dual wireless charger similar to that of what is offered in the Hyundai Santa Fe. But even with the single wireless charging pad, the orientation, the layout, the ergonomics of it, very, very good. Now my third like, again continuing on the interior, is going to be the massaging or active contour seats. Now I will kind of put this with a caveat in that I don't know how often I would actually use this feature, but given it is on the Explorer ST, it was on this vehicle as equipped, I found myself using it, for maybe short periods as a time, just to get a little bit of, extra movement in the body, little like muscle relaxation on that road trip that it did take with it. It's a cool feature. Not every other midsize three-row vehicle in this segment offers such a feature. There are some others that either have it on the driver's seat only, maybe offered as a standalone package, things like that, but it's typically a feature you don't normally see out there. And I have to say, with the amount of adjustability that comes with this active contour seat, for example, you have 3 different lumbar adjustments at different heights of the seat. That's a standout feature, which by itself, when used alone, makes getting comfortable within these seats much better than that of just a standard 2-way lumbar or even 4-way lumbar in vehicles. So that's kind of a side benefit, if you will. And like I said, I think just the amount of adjustments, the different patterns or massage functions that they have on the infotainment screen is all very good. My fourth like with the Explorer ST is going to be the handling of this vehicle, given it is a 3-row SUV like this one. Now, some of it has to do with the rear-wheel drive based architecture it is based upon. Of course, this one was all-wheel drive that I tested, but the Explorer handled extremely, extremely well. It was kind of funny how nimble it felt behind the wheel, how stiff the chassis felt, and like I said, the rear-wheel drive base, platform with the different drive modes and things like that likely did help how it felt and how it drove. But I just think it was a very, compliant, composed, suspension tune was appropriate for the ST Performance model, which this one was. I hope some of the other trim levels would be a little bit softer for a more comfortable ride. This one wasn't harsh, but it certainly wasn't luxurious by any means. But I just really enjoyed driving the Explorer ST, pushing it around corners, because it could take a lot of what you could throw at it. Again, for its size and its weight, that was very, very impressive. Next up, my fifth like is going to be the BlueCruise functionality combined with the emergency stop function of the vehicle. So I like the fact that Ford offers a hands-free driving feature, which is aka BlueCruise. I don't necessarily love the way they, price the feature and the different options they give you. It's kind of just to be determined what different manufacturers will end up charging for these. A lot of them are going subscription based, which is a little bit unfortunate. You can do a one-time purchase if you plan on using it a lot. But nonetheless, the pricing aside, the BlueCruise is a very cool feature. It is over-the-air software updatable. This one didn't have the latest version, which I was disappointed in some of the aspects of BlueCruise that will be hopefully available in the future, but was not available, such as the automatic lane change assist on this one. But with BlueCruise and some of the other driver assistance features, it comes with an emergency stop feature, like some other OEMs are also rolling out. But I actually did test this one simply by covering the eye tracking or the facial tension monitor on the steering column. And essentially, this system did bring the vehicle to a complete stop and activated the emergency hazard lights to hopefully draw attention if you become, incapacitated behind the wheel. So that was actually pretty cool to see versus some of the other implementations out there. So essentially, in a nutshell, what happens if the system detects you are, not responding or anything like that, is it will quickly pump the brakes a number of times. Somewhere around 4 to 6 times, it will pump the brakes, try and get you to wake up or return input into the vehicle. If it at that point cannot get your attention, it will do it a little bit more aggressively, more rapidly, and then it will eventually start slowing down the vehicle at a fairly quick, swift pace, although not abrupt by any means, while simultaneously activating the hazard lights. And all the lane centering and things like that will remain active, so hopefully you stay on the roadway that you're traveling. And it will bring the vehicle to a 100% complete stop, hazard lights on, kind of in the middle of the road or the middle of the lane in which you're currently at. Very, very good. Now, it would be cool to pull off to the side of the road if possible, but I understand that it's hard for a system like this to gauge whether or not that is the best course of action. But nonetheless, brings the vehicle to a stop, hazard lights on, lane centering on so you don't travel off the roadway. And yeah, pretty non-invasive as a whole, although I will say, depending on how you drive and how you interfere or block that sensor, that can become an issue if you like to, hold the 12 o'clock position on the steering wheel while using cruise control. and it cannot see your face, essentially that will be enough to activate the emergency stop function. Again, if cruise control is engaged. My next like with the Explorer ST was some of the forward LED lighting, including the LED cornering lights and the fade on and off high beams. Now this uses an LED reflector headlamp, if I'm not mistaken. Does have LED fog lights in this vehicle, as well as those cornering lights and things like that. So it has a lot of the, some of the latest technology or features available, if you will. And I just like the fact that, if you have your turn signal on at lower speeds or turn the steering wheel at lower speeds, it will go ahead and project additional light to the left or right corners of the vehicle. Cornering lights are not a new feature, but they're really not found on many new vehicles out there. So when you see them, it's actually kind of a benefit, if you will. And then in addition to those cornering lights, which I think work pretty good, the high beams actually fade on and off either with the high beam assist or without them if you manually engage them. And I think it just adds a little bit more of a premium touch, although I will say sometimes it might be hard to see if the high beams are actually on at a glance because of the way they fade on and off. But I think it just has a little bit of a more premium feel. And even though the high beams and everything like that wasn't the best performance out there, I like the implementation. I like the cornering lights for that lower speed visibility. And overall, I think the lighting package in the Explorer ST is pretty good. Again, Ford low beam and high beams, not the best out there. I think they have a little bit of glare as well because they are an LED reflector design, not necessarily a projector. But I think the running lights, the signatures, the turn signals, all of that, ambient interior lighting, etc., pretty good for the most part. And I like those two specific features of the forward lighting. And then I think my last like with the Explorer ST that stood out to me is the digital dashboard. Now Fords have a pretty good ability to customize the settings based on how you like to operate the vehicle, meaning on the infotainment system and or the digital cluster, you can go through a menu or a number of different menus to tweak and adjust what is displayed either on the digital cluster and or the infotainment system, and essentially change settings on how the vehicle operates with the window controls, the seat memory, the entry exit, a number of things. I've gone over this in the Ford Ranger video if you guys want to check out that in a little bit more detail. But I specifically like the dashboard font that they use. I think it's very easy to read, very clear, looks pretty premium as well. There's a number of settings that you can do on the digital dashboard to, again, customize what is displayed on them. I think the processing time and the refresh rate of the digital dashboard is better than that of some other manufacturers out there. And other than a couple missing features maybe for the digital dash that some other manufacturers offer, I think overall it's very, easy to use, very user customizable. And I don't really have many complaints about it there. And I guess before we get into my list of dislikes, there is one additional like I wanted to mention with the Explorer ST, and it has to do with the ST part of it in specific. And that's gonna be the twin turbo 3-liter Ecoboost V6 underneath the hood. Engine was quite stout, had a good amount of performance, although I'm not gonna lie, it felt like it was a little bit slower than I was expecting going into the week with the vehicle, or maybe the horsepower and torque figures suggest on paper. It was certainly very quick, but I think at times, especially under rolling acceleration, maybe not as swift as I was expecting, or just what these specs suggest on paper, but nonetheless, still very stout, mid-size 3-row SUV. And I also like the way it sounded inside of the cabin. I think it had a pretty good rumble, deeper tone to it. Now the exhaust, on the other hand, might be a little bit of a different story, but from inside the cabin, whether it's augmented or not, sounded pretty good, very throaty, deep response. And the engine and the performance that it had, again, well above average from other similar midsize through SUVs. But again, maybe not as much as I was expecting, just, given the Explorer ST nameplate. Anyways, that's going to do it here for my list of dedicated likes with the Explorer ST. Now let's get into things that I didn't love so much about it over my week. So the first one is going to be maybe due to the fact that this exact one I had was a pre-production vehicle, so not a series VIN that a retail consumer can purchase. But the center storage tray below the wireless charging pad in the center console was very cheap feeling and did not function as intended. Now, again, this could be the pre-production aspect of this vehicle, but if there's any other owners or people who have experienced this, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section. Essentially, the button on top of the storage lid would not consistently open it unless you were very precise in the amount of force you press down on the button with and or assisted it by lifting it up simultaneously while pushing the button. Really cheap implementation. Again, hopefully this is fixed in series production vehicles, but the one I had did have that issue, so it could be something that, you know, may affect retail units. The second dislike I had with it was specific to the programming for the seatbelt reminder or indicator on the dashboard. I like the fact that it has a seatbelt indicator for every single seat inside the vehicle to see whether or not you're buckled or not, but it took quite a long time to go away after actually starting to drive the vehicle. So essentially what would happen is you get in, start up, seatbelt indicator on the digital dashboard, you put your seatbelt on, you have a green check mark at that point, put the vehicle in reverse, back out your driveway, start driving away, and it would take, I think, over 30 seconds for the thing to automatically clear and go away, even again, if your seatbelt was buckled. Otherwise, you could hit the OK button on the steering wheel to clear it earlier than that if you wanted. But that was just a small annoyance that, every day you'd have to hit the OK button just to clear that message. Otherwise, you'd have to wait a period of 30, 40 seconds for that to go away. Again, even though the seatbelt's buckled, to me, that message should go away immediately upon buckling your seatbelt or putting the vehicle in gear after buckling your seatbelt, and display any of the other information that you want up on the display. So again, some of you guys might think that's a minor complaint, but I think if you're using the vehicle daily, having that message up on the screen consistently for a period of time, even when you're already driving, just annoying and something they should easily be able to fix with a little bit of software. Now, my third dislike is going to be the rotary gear shifter. So I didn't think this was going to bother me as much as it did, but I think there's two reasons why it did. Number one is it was actually fairly slow to respond with the gear changes in the 10-speed automatic transmission. Not exactly sure why. Other push-pull dial systems from other manufacturers are more responsive in going, say, from reverse to drive or park to drive, etc. And every time I would back out of my driveway with the Explorer ST, go into drive, there would be a several second delay. And yes, it could be due to the transmission still being cold or cool, not up to operating temperature, but I found it happening more often than not, even when it was warm. And I think the second reason I didn't like it was because the drive mode selection was kind of in a similar vicinity to the actual transmission. And I actually caught myself one time trying to shift the transmission when intentionally I was trying to change the drive mode. So yeah, not exactly sure. It just didn't feel like it was the best implementation of a digital or shift-by-wire system that I felt. Again, some people out there might find it fine or things like that, but didn't like the way it's kind of next to the drive mode selection and obviously the response time of the transmission or shifting into the gear that you're wanting to was not great. My fourth dislike with this vehicle is going to go right back to that drive mode selection dial. And that is not only the detents of the drive mode selection, but also the location of the actual physical dial in the center console. So I guess we'll start with the physical location. It's right next to the actual transmission gear selection dial. We know that, not the best. But it's also located almost directly down from the center console lid. So to actually get your hand in the correct position to change the dial itself, your hand essentially has to sit like this and go almost straight down and then twist in this type of motion. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a little bit hard on the actual wrist and definitely not an ergonomic position to be placing your wrist in. So that alone bothered me, but the fact that the detents were so fine or so minor with the dial and the actual order of the dry modes on the actual digital dash or the digital display, all of it just didn't seem correct to me. So outside the location and straining your wrist, the detents are so minor that like 1/16 of a turn is the detent. And I'll go ahead and try to overlay some, video I have up on the screen. One turn or one detent of the dial is what you have to do to enable the dry mode to actually pop up on the screen. Now, if you only move it one detent or one turn, it will not actually change the dry mode that you're in. You have to go to number 2 or the second turn, and that will start to adjust the dry modes after that is popped up on the display. Now, I was often wanting to go from normal into sport mode, and to do normal to sport, you have to go over eco. So that means at this point, you have to do one turn to get the dry modes on the screen, 2 turns will get you in eco, and then the third turn will get you into sport because of the order of the dry modes and how you select it on the dash. So to me, this all needs to be rearranged. The detents need to be larger. The first detent needs to actually change the dry mode instead of just bringing the dry modes up on the dash. They might have done this so you don't accidentally change dry modes by bumping it, but I think it should automatically change on the first rotation of the knob. And also, sport needs to be directly next to normal, either on the left or right hand side. You should not have to jump over eco to get to sport mode, because I think that's just a bad order of the dry modes, in the software. So that's going to be my rant on the dry mode selection for the Explorer ST. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with anything I said in that down in the comment section below, especially if you are an Explorer ST owner. That would kind of bother me because I'd be frequently, like I said, going from normal to sport. And to do that, it's a little bit more cumbersome than it should be. My 5th dislike I believe we're on is going to be the louder HVAC fan inside of the cabin. So just like most other manufacturers out there, it has an automatic dual zone climate control for the front row. It has 3 different maximum fan speeds that you can press for auto. So basically it limits the maximum speed which the fan does turn and blows air in the cabin. But regardless of the speed that you had the fan on, it always seemed like it was a little bit louder than other manufacturers I've experienced out there, even if the cabin was already up to temperature. Now, specifically, this was on the higher fan speeds because obviously the higher it is, the louder it is. But if you had the cabin set at 72 degrees or 70 degrees, it's already been there for quite some time, after an hour of driving. It just always felt like the HVAC fan was running at a higher, louder speed than it actually needed to be. It also sounded like it was near the top of the center of the dashboard, where some other vehicles might be under the passenger side glove box or just a little bit farther away so it doesn't bother you as much. But to me, it just felt like the fan was running higher than it needed to be, and also it was just loud in general. So again, that's probably a small issue for a lot of other people out there, but at the same time, if you're paying $62,000, you probably want a pretty premium experience in my opinion, and the HVAC was not the worst, but definitely not the best by far out there. Moving on, my next dislike is going to be something that actually family members complained about. I didn't necessarily, I see their point, I guess you could say, but I did not necessarily experience this myself. But when I had passengers in the second row of the vehicle, the seat belt buckles are a little bit weird in their design. I say this because there's a little bit of a loop that you can put the seatbelt buckle through. Now, neither of them were in that loop when I received it, and it could be just for folding the seats down to keep the buckle kind of in position. But the seat belts were hard to buckle for them, and I think it was due to the way that the loop was kind of integrated in the buckle itself and how long the strap was on the buckle. So maybe take this with a grain of salt, experience the second row seat belts for yourself and see if that is an issue for you. But they did have some, a little bit of an issue getting buckled in using the seat belt the way it was designed. And again, maybe that may present issues with car seats or just the types of, passengers or body type or whatever might be an issue. Just thought I'd throw it in there because they did mention it, and always like to hear other people's opinion on how things function inside the vehicle. I think my last dislike with the Explorer ST has to do with its observed fuel economy. Now, like I said, I drove this over 300 miles there and back round trip. I reset the fuel economy prior to leaving, and at about 77 miles an hour out in the interstate, I think ambient conditions were in the low 40 degrees that day, not a ton of wind. We observed 20.6 mpg. Now, this vehicle is rated at 18 city, 25 out on the highway, and to see 20.6 at roughly 77 miles an hour isn't exactly promising, but I will say, at higher speeds, generally MPG does fall off, above 65 miles an hour especially. It's kind of an exponential loss. So MPG certainly not going to be a strong suit with the Explorer ST, and I would say this for the city side of things as well, given I was regularly seeing about 16 to 17 MPG in city driving only. Now that's much closer to the 18 MPG that's rated at from the EPA versus the 20 and a half versus 25. But overall MPG over my week with the vehicle was right around 19 MPG, and again, you might not be buying this vehicle for fuel economy reasons, but again, there are many more fuel efficient options out there, especially when you start to get into hybrids. I did like the fact that this wasn't a hybrid and it had like no hybrid, attributes other than the engine stop start system, which really wasn't that smooth. But just something to consider given we didn't observe really anywhere close to the 25. I was kind of hoping to see 22 to 23, but 20 and a half kind of is what it is. And the good news is this vehicle is capable of running on 87 octane, although I have seen owners out there probably recommending that you run at 91 or higher premium octane fuel if you want the ultimate performance that's rated on paper. So I think that is pretty much going to do it here for my dedicated list of likes and dislikes for the 2025 Ford Explorer ST. Really, there's not a ton of bad about the vehicle, just a couple kind of nitpicks here and there. But I really like to mention everything I truly do like and that stands out versus some of the competition and the dislikes that, kind of bother me on a daily basis, because ultimately, if I'm spending over $60,000 on a vehicle like this, I want everything to be as perfect as possible. And I get that is realistically not possible, but there's vehicles that do come close. And I think the Explorer is a solid offering, especially if they could tweak a little bit of the software issues and the BlueCruise, functionality that's not fully up to date. Things like that, they would make it, just that much closer. But overall, regardless, it is still a very, nice, well-rounded vehicle, especially if you're looking for something that's more performance-oriented in the midsize three-row space, don't care about fuel economy. Still has a lot of the main core features and options that one would expect. And I would definitely take a look. I think it's a cool vehicle. I like that Ford offers something like this on the market. Ultimately, I don't think you'll find a much better handling vehicle of this size for the given price point out on the market either. So all around, I think it's a very cool product offering. First time I've experienced this generation Explorer. But let me know what you guys think. If you guys own one of these vehicles, down in the comment section below. Love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it and or ownership experiences. I want to give a huge thanks to Ford for sending this vehicle out for me to test and review once again. Look forward to 2025 and all the new vehicles that I will be testing over my week with it. This was the first one that went into the 2025 calendar year. So yeah, overall, I am very excited, and let me know what you guys think of the Ford Explorer ST down in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed this video and or found something helpful, hit that like button below, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out additional content I've already posted and or coming up on the Explorer ST, including driving impressions as well as a full walk around tour. And like I said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, I hope to see you guys in the next one.